A very good morning and welcome once again to Hampstead Synagogue Online. And this is the summer holiday that never was, although some of our members are managing to do staycationing, traveling up and down the United Kingdom. But we wanted to offer our members a holiday. And so over the last 3 weeks, we visited 2 countries so far, and today is our third. We visited Australia, then we visited Israel, and today we're going to be visiting India. And the numbers of people watching has got steadily grown. We almost got up to 2,000 people last time, and people are watching all over the world, which is absolutely wonderful. And so it would possibly help all our visitors and guests to know that the Hampstead Synagogue is based in London. We are an Orthodox community. Founded in 1892 and have one of the so-called cathedral synagogues of the United Kingdom. We take the religious authority of the chief rabbi, Ephraim Mervis, who may be mentioned later on, as one of our guests has a connection there, so we'll be talking about that. I'd like to thank our media sponsors. That's the Jewish News, which is a Jewish newspaper here in London. And let's just fingers crossed that everything's going to work. We might be experiencing a few technical problems. We will have to wait and see how things pan out. But as I say, let's hope that everything works out. In fact, there should really be a Jewish prayer about modern technology, I think, and particularly I'm a bit anxious about today. We'll see how things go. So what we're going to do is after I click my fingers, we're all going to be transported to India. And I think we should do that now. And I believe that the time over there is 3:30 in the afternoon, 3:30. So I'm clicking my fingers now. And there I can see we're now in India, and Ralphie is there waiting for us. So just in time for tea, Ralphie.
Namaste from India. Shalom.
Thank you very much.
India.
And shalom from London, and a very good afternoon to you. So now you're our hosts now, because we're all over in India, and hopefully we'll be joined by another guest later on. But we're getting a bit of problems with the connections, and hopefully that will happen. So, Ralphie, if I can quickly introduce you, you were born and educated in India in a Jewish family. You traveled widely across the world, worked as an engineer for 13 years. You had a communal responsibility working for ORT, an organization that perhaps you could tell our viewers about. I know that their worldwide offices is based in Camden Town, which is very close to where we were just a short time ago. I'm now in India, of course, but we are in Hampstead. You're also involved in software development as part of your career path, but now you're really all about preserving the Jewish culture in India. Is that right, Ralphie?
Absolutely. Gabriel, first of all, thank you very much for welcoming me on this show. And I am really happy that your show is very widely seen by all the members of the community and far and wide worldwide. So I'm sure in this audience there are people who have visited us in India, or they may be wanting to visit us in India. So finally, I'm happy to give some insight into what exactly the Jewish community is currently in India. We are basically 3,500 community members who are actively involved in the community and who have the full recognition of the Israeli rabbinate. They are basically the Bnei Israel community, which is the largest, in the sense that they are almost nearly 95% of the community currently living in India. And the remaining 5% is consisting of the Baghdadi Jewish community who came from Iraq, and the Kochini Jewish community, which is, you can count on your fingers, because that community migrated to Israel, every community member together way back in 60s. So basically Ben Israel, Baghdadi, and the Kochini, and you can call them, and I call it as the BBC Jews of India, who are remaining here. And to add to this, there are community who are not in the mainstream, but they are in the process of getting recognition. They are the Manipuri and Mizoram Jews, and 3,000 of them have actually migrated to Israel. And when they make Aliyah, they actually get a full conversion because their recognition needs to be done as per the chief rabbi in Israel's rules and regulations. And there are community members who are in Andhra Pradesh, Bene Ephraim, and in also a place which is called Erod, and they are basically the members of the Torah Zion Center, and these are other community members who are emerging to become Jewish. So that's the kind of community, but they are spread largely in Mumbai with 10 synagogues. Then there are some community members in a city which is about 100 miles from Bombay, in a northern part of Bombay called Pune. And that's where the Baghdadi community largely remained, but there is a good amount of Ben Israel community, and we have 2 synagogues there. Then we have community in Ahmedabad with 1 synagogue and less than 200 members of the community. Then we have community in Delhi, which is where we have one very lovely center, and then we have community in Kolkata with 3 synagogues, and in Cochin with 7 synagogues, out of which only 1 is functioning. And recently, to our great delight, 1 more synagogue got renovated and re-established as a full-fledged synagogue with a new Torah from Israel.
Oh, wonderful. That's really good news. Ralphie, so you're talking about quite a disparate community. It's not all in the same place. So how does the community get a sense of being national?
So the majority of the community is in Bombay, where almost every major community rituals are held. So if you see a gathering for Rosh Hashanah in usual times in the community, there would be 300 members attending in one shul, another 500 attending in another shul. So that would be the larger community members attending the prayers. And if there is a wedding, even the community members from other parts of India, they generally find their one of the partners from Bombay, because that's where the larger community is. And sometimes, of course, even the Bombay community members find their partners either from Bombay community or from the Jewish community of Indian origin in the rest of the world, including Israel, Canada, and England, and so on and so forth. We have
Lovely.
a good community interaction worldwide. That's how
And
we
yes,
stay
yes,
together.
and that's a good point to tell that we're getting lots of comments now from all over the world coming in and watching the broadcast and saying well done. If you have any questions that you would like to put to Ralphie, please do so, and hopefully we'll come to choose some of them later on in this broadcast. Ralphie, obviously there's one thing that is in the back of our minds at all times, and that of course is the pandemic. How has the Jewish community in India been coping?
So during COVID in India, I must admit that the government, and under the leadership of our beloved Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi, the things were very well managed to a large extent. But as you know, the scale of this community with 1.35 billion people is not easy to manage for anyone in a complete true sense. So there were a few people who did not listen, or they did not take into consideration the kind of challenge this pandemic is putting in front of them, and so they did cause certain kind of a spread which was unexpected. But as far as the government is concerned, I think they did an amazing and incredible job. We have to admit it. Still, the scale of this country is so huge that if you control the operation of the pandemic in one area, it spreads into other, and so on and so forth. But states like Kerala, I was traveling with a group of Americans, almost 60 of them, and when we arrived on 4th of February in Kerala at the airport of Cochin, our temperatures were checked, which is almost, according to me, 1.5 months before really worldwide attention was brought to this pandemic. So they were fully geared even at that time. And that's why in cities like Kerala and Cochin, the pandemic was in large control. So government and non-profit organizations and my Rotary clubs really raised money to feed the people, to give medicine. It was huge task, and believe me, some of the activities are still continuing. Our Rotary took up a challenge that from the time we started, we wanted to feed over 2 million people, and we completed that task. So you can imagine the volume and the spread of just one organization is such large. So it is really a mammoth task.
I've never visited India, but obviously I've seen pictures and film, and particularly on the British news services. And one of the images is of the train service where everybody is packed in and people are even sitting on the roof of the train. And if you see the villages or cities, they seem to be packed with people. All the roads are packed with pedestrians in the roads and traffic. How can a country like that socially distance itself?
It is very difficult. That's why the news is the trains have not started. Believe me. The second most important area where people crowd in India are temples and other religious places. So mosque and other important places of worship, they are all kept closed. So due to which our synagogues are also not operating, except one synagogue in Delhi, which is conservative. They have a service on Zoom. But today, we are the ones who had a Selyot in the morning for the community on Zoom from our community in Mumbai, the community in Israel Zoomed, and people from Indian community logged on, and also from American community, they are going to have a Zoom, and community members from India will log on. So there are three different Selyot prayers which took place. So what has happened, Gabriel, that since the community numbers have dwindled to 3,500 from 35,000 at one time before independence of India, we have become more global, and we feel connection to our fellow Jews from around the world, either from Indian Jewish community or from the global Jewish community, very significant. That's the status of this community now.
Well, we'll come back to that in a moment, but we got a question in from Alexandra Viltura, I believe the name is. And the question is, do the groups, do different Jewish groups come together for holidays and seminars? You mentioned
Absolutely.
You mentioned online, but different parts of the Jewish community have very different traditions. Do you come together for the Zoom religious meetings, or is it different?
Absolutely. We come together for our religious meetings, and in fact, for religious events. 45 to 50 years ago, these community mainstreams, which I mentioned, the Ben Israel, the Baghdadi, and the Kochini, they stayed as if they were in different compartments. But when the numbers dwindled to what I say below 5,000, the remaining members of the community started to realize the need to get connected. And so in the times when I grew up, for me, it was not a difference whether the fellow Jew is a Kochini community member or a Baghdadi community member, and I was from the Ben Israel community. That difference was not felt in the generation that I grew up. And so I have been invited for Shabbat prayers and meals at Kochini communities' homes, or in Kochini synagogues and in Baghdadi synagogues. In fact, I am a Bene Israel praying in Baghdadi synagogue usually, because they don't have a minyan. You can understand why.
Absolutely. So, Ralphie, I wonder if you'll forgive me, and because every session that we've done so far, I've tried to give a little bit of context for our viewers as to the history of the country that we're visiting. So, if I get anything wrong, please feel free to correct me, because I think what would be good for our viewers is context. Because you've mentioned Bnei Israel, for example, I think we should try to put some context together. So if I can, I'll just read this, which is a little potted history of the Jewish community in India, which I think will surprise a lot of people about how old the community is and the culture which we're talking about. So I'm going to say
Sure.
this. It is thought that the first Jews in India were members of the biblical lost tribes of Israel, having settled on the Malabar coast after the Assyrian conquest of the Kingdom of Israel some 2,800 years ago in the 9th century BCE. This includes the Bnei Israel, sons of Israel, the Cochin Jews, and the Bnei Menashe. India is home to three historically distinct Jewish communities. So first, the Cochin Jews. Cochin Jews settled in southern India around modern-day Kochi and quickly earned the favor of local rulers. In 1524, Cochin took in Jewish refugees when the Moors attacked Jews in Kondgalar. They were given freedom to set up what would become Jewtown, a place that it still exists today.
Yes.
In the latter half of the 17th and into the 18th century, an influx of Jewish immigration from the Middle East, North Africa, and Spain saw the Jewish community in Cochin continue to grow and thrive. Jewish immigrants from the Middle East were particularly successful in India, with many prominent families using their connections to establish a vast array of trading networks. The Bnei Israel settled mainly in modern-day Mumbai, Ahmedabad, and Karachi, now Pakistan, shortly after the arrival of Cochin Jews in the south, some 2,500 years ago. They too kept their faith while also assimilating to the local culture, eventually speaking the native Marathi language and adopting local customs. They faced no anti-Semitism and often intermarried with the local non-Jewish Marathi people. Over time, they began to resemble the Marta people and also practiced their customs, still maintaining their Jewish heritage, albeit in a more assimilated manner than their southern counterparts. They practiced a rather localized form of Judaism that really only had a few recognizable traces of traditional Jewish practice. Teachers from Baghdad and Cochin arrived in Bombay and taught the Bnei Israel mainstream Judaism, which allowed them to read the Torah and re-establish their Jewish identity. As a result, the first synagogue in then Bombay, Sha'ar Rahamim, was established in 1796.
Right.
And the Baghdadi Jews. The 19th century saw Baghdadi Jews arrive in India, fleeing religious persecution in Iraq and other Muslim lands northwest of India, including Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Afghanistan. Jewish tradesmen from Baghdad had a long history of traveling to India and found success in their new home. This included the influential Sassoon family, who arrived in then Bombay in 1832. David
Right.
Sassoon, the patron of the family, was particularly well connected in India and became a leader of the Baghdadi Jewish community in the city. Under British imperial rule, Indian Jews prospered enormously, achieving heights in population and wealth. However, India achieved its independence from the British in 1947, and the rise of Indian nationalism made some Indian Jews uncomfortable as they identified more as British than Indian. This, coupled with the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, saw many Jews leave India. In the 1970s, the Bnei Menashe and Bnei Ephraim tribes, small tribes that had practiced Judaism until forcibly converted by Christian missionaries in the 19th century, began to practice Judaism again. In more recent times, the Bnei Israeli community's claim of being descendants of the Kohanim, the ancient Israeli priests who claimed descent from Aaron, was confirmed by a DNA test in 2002. In 2008, the Chabad house in Mumbai was a target during the 2008 Mumbai attacks, and Rabbi Gavriel Holtzberg, his wife Rivka, and a number of Israeli and American nationals were murdered by Pakistani terrorists at the Chabad house. Despite this tragic occurrence, Indian Jewry continues to exist peacefully within the diversity of India. Hebrew University estimated that India was home to between 4,900 and 7,000 Jews as of 1996. The majority of Indian Jews live in Mumbai and its surrounding areas, including Thane. There are also small communities throughout the country, including Calcutta, New Delhi, Bangalore, and Kochi. Ralph, is that about right?
Yes, yes, it's a very good summary of the community's heritage, and I can add a few of very important points. One is that, first of all, in India, the Jewish community is so significant. Before the full diplomatic ties were established, the Indian government as well as the Israeli government gave a lot of leverage to their relationship by using the community people, the community events, because there was no full diplomatic relationship. After the full diplomatic ties were established, and then, after many years, not only the Prime Minister went to Israel, but before that, our President of India went to Israel. And his office actually called me to ask for my copy of the book about the Jewish heritage. And that book was given, as well as when the Prime Minister went, his office called for the copy of the book. And they used that books to prepare for their speeches in Israel. So I was present at the time when the President of India was conferred by the Hebrew University honorary doctorate. And at the acceptance speech, he said, in Bombay University, Hebrew was taught 70 years before it was taught in the Hebrew University. And when this was said, the president of the Hebrew University, who happened to be an Iraqi Jew known to us, he asked me, Ralphie, how did you give this information? I said, it's documented, because that was the reality. We had a Hebrew language chair in University of Bombay almost 80, 100 years before Hebrew University was established. And so you can understand the importance of the Jewish life in the diaspora for the state of Israel. It is so significant. So I'm very glad that these are some of the activities. And also in this community, there have been some very unique leaders. A lady who was a doctor, she went to England on the then British government scholarship to study gynecology, to do her MD. And believe me, she was none other than a lady called Dr. Jerusha Girard. She came back, and the British government then, which was operating in India, made her the chief superintendent of a leading hospital in Bombay called the Kama and Albalas Hospital. Today, the Tata Foundation is establishing a museum of this particular hospital, where the role of this lady, doctor, is going to be significantly highlighted. And they have already established a postgraduate research library at this hospital in honor of the late Dr. Jerusha Girard. So this is very significant to know that in this community, in this culture, they respected the Jewish community members in various fields, medicine, law, education, tremendously. And that's what, and of course in business, as you saw about the Sassoons, I will definitely give a good detail about the Sassoons, because I happened to make a documentary film when the David Sassoon Library completed 150 years in India. And to see the documentary film, there were 3,500 people who came. So you can understand the significance of the contribution of the Jewish community, and some of them is so much uh, appreciated and admired, and sometimes it is continued from generation to generation.
I think, Ralphie, that you are probably an unofficial Jewish diplomat.
Thank you. Thank you.
And actually, Israel and India have very good relationships. I think that
Yes.
it's the third most important trading country with Israel at the moment.
100%. In fact, we are trading year by year, increasing trade with Israel, both ways. And this is great, because the partnership established between the two nations is so that even during pandemic, when Israel needed in the beginning stage certain medicine and things from India, our Prime Minister allowed them to come by few planes and take the cargo from India with full support. And similarly, Israeli government took a decision that in return, as a goodwill gesture, we must respond, and they sent 20 of their doctors to come and help in the pandemic kind of identification of COVID with certain tests which were quicker than otherwise tests which take long time. So there is a goodwill, there is a strength of each one trying to help the other nation very, very generously, enthusiastically.
Amazing. And also, I think it's true, isn't it? Because the size of the Jewish community in India is not that great, that the Jewish community in Israel supports the Jewish community in India. Is that correct?
That is true. That is true. Absolutely true.
And that's done quite by visiting and also online, because obviously there may be a shortage of rabbis, etc., and things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely, 100%. And it is happening more and more. You can imagine that during Passover, what we get matzah is from Israel. So you can understand, even for our kiddush kosher wine, we don't have any company manufacturing kosher wine in India, and hence we depend largely on the wines kosher coming from Israel. So there is a tremendous dependency. For our high holidays, we sometimes use, of course, our community members who are cantors. They do beautiful prayers and their melodies are amazing. But we also have some synagogues who can invite the rabbis from Israel to come and conduct the high holiday prayers or spend a year or so. And those kind of activities are happening more often. For Brit Milah, we do the Brit Milah with our 3 mohels who are there. For shokhets, we have 20 trained shokhets all over India. And so we manage all these rituals with the help of local community members.
Okay, so just for those who are a little bit out of town, a mohel is for circumcision and shochet is for ritual slaughter of animals, making sure that the animals are kosher to eat, fit for eating. Okay, by the way, I think Mohammed Bail, you wished us a Shabbat Shalom, but not your fault. Shabbat Shalom means a peaceful Sabbath, and we're not quite there yet, but a Shavua Tov, a good week ahead. It's I'm sure that's also the sentiment that you wanted to give us. So thank you for your message. Ralphie, I know that our Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, paid a visit to you, and I wondered whether or not you could share with us some of your photo album.
Sure, sure. I think it was the most special visit which happened in 2015 end, December 26th. The Chief Rabbi arrived along with his wife and Valerie, and of course both the sons, Noam, and we had Etan. So it was by chance I was invited at the farewell reception for their son Danny in Jerusalem at one of my common friends' home, and I was introduced to the Chief Rabbi, and I presented him the book on the Jews of India, and he said, "Oh, that's an incredible history of the Jewish community, and I must visit one day." And immediately I was delighted to respond to say that it will be my pleasure to invite and to welcome you. And immediately I was taken aside and told by his wonderful wife that if you really are serious, you need to write to his office. And the same evening, I wrote an email and I got a call from the office. And then, of course, the Chief Rabbi called me when he returned back to London, saying he accepts our invitation to come to India. And he was able to come with his wife and, of course, 2 sons. So myself and my wife went to Delhi to receive him. And here you see the photo along with our friend who was the Indian Deputy High Commissioner in England, who specially flew down to Delhi in order to receive the Chief Rabbi, and he hosted a reception in his honor. So you can see in the next photograph of the visit of the Chief Rabbi, where he came to the Delhi Jewish community, and we had a reception for him with about 120 people coming from the Israeli embassy, the Jewish community members, and some of the business people staying there. And you could see there is a Sefer Torah, which we got from this one of the center of the Chabad, which we took and traveled around the country. So next picture, we will see that we actually traveled with that Sefer Torah, and we went to Kolkata. We visited one of the very special non-profit organization, which is called the Economic Rural Development Center, and that was run by one of a very special gentleman from England. So Chief Rabbi got connected with him before coming, and we visited the center. Steve, he's talking to the Chief Rabbi. In the next picture, you will see that we visited the Kolkata community, and we were given a reception with cultural dances and programs and sports activity. And then we visited the Shaharit. Next picture, we will see that we were given a reception by the board of the community there, and they all came to meet with the Chief Rabbi and the family, and they gave a brief about the community. Next picture, we will see that we went to the synagogue, and you can see here we did the prayers in the synagogue. As you can see, the president of the community is on the bima with the Chief Rabbi and myself, and we of course presented the plaques to the synagogue, marking and establishing that this visit of the Chief Rabbi was done to their synagogue. We visited all the 3 remaining synagogues. We also visited the cemetery in order to get the rabbi a general idea about the community. You will see in the next picture. And there were 40 to 50 people came. This is the synagogue, which is called the Magen David Synagogue, one of the very, very large synagogue. It can accommodate 800 to 1,000 people. But currently, you could see that the community is less than 30. And even though on that day, some of those who are staying in Bangalore and some of those community members who are staying in Myanmar, they traveled all the way to Kolkata and joined us for the beautiful prayers. And they said that almost after several years, there has been a prayer with the Torah, because currently this synagogue doesn't have the Torah. They have a Torah in another synagogue, which is called the Bethel. And in the next picture, you will see that the rabbi is meeting another community. On the next slide. Can we see the next slide?
It doesn't look like. What would we be seeing on the next slide, Ralph?
Okay. So we will be seeing that the community members have gathered in the synagogue, not only on the main section, but on the ladies' gallery. And then we actually visited a Neve Shalom synagogue. In the next slide, it's about visit to a synagogue called Neve Shalom. Now, this Magen David and the Neve Shalom synagogue, they are 2 synagogues in the same compound. You can imagine that the community was so much active and so large. There were 5,000 members of the community living in Kolkata. So they basically had 2 synagogues in the same compound, which means the activeness of the community was very, very significant. Today, in this community, there is one Jewish family called Nahum, and they are running a bakery there. And the other families, they are also running some businesses. But the Elaz family and the other families, Cohen family, they were very, very well established with their businesses. And large company of Jewish family was called Indian Tobacco Company, ITC. It's the largest company in Kolkata, which is even running currently, owned by some other family. So you can understand that it's a heritage is phenomenal. The Sassoons were there, and there's a famous book which is very worth reading, The Flowers in the Blood. It's a story of the Flora Sassoon and how their opium trade was at that time, which was legal, was being managed by the Sassoon family.
Thank you, Ralph. We're going to take a short break in a few moments, but I just wanted to thank Alexandra for his comment. And he said that the Chief Rabbi visited Krakow in Poland, and he was impressed with the Chief Rabbi's visit there. So thanks for that, Alexandra. We're going to take a short break now, and we're going to come back with more from India.
Thank you.
So, welcome back to Hampstead Synagogue Online, and a good afternoon because we're actually now in India. But now it's going to get a bit complicated because Zipporah is joining us from Israel. And we
Hi.
mentioned, but hello, Zipporah. We mentioned before, didn't we, Ralphie, that the Jewish community in India get a lot of support from Israel. So perhaps, can I ask you if you'll be so kind as to introduce Zipporah for me, Ralphie? And Zipporah, can I ask that?
So,
And I just we'll monitor the sound, but Zipporah, I might come in and ask you to do something with your microphone later. But Ralphie, if
Okay.
you would like to introduce Zipporah, that'd be great. Ralphie?
Sephora May is born
Ralphie?
Okay, so what we're going to do, Ralphie, can I ask you to please lose your camera? Can you switch your camera off?
Yes, I can.
Um,
Can you hear me now?
we can hear you, so
Yes.
carry on, Ralphie.
Okay, so basically, Sephora Mir is born and brought up and educated originally in India at a place called Cochin, and she actually wrote a very significant essay that the two nations, India and Israel, should be united. And this was an essay which she wrote as a school child, and this essay was forgotten later. But later, when the Prime Minister of India visited Israel, the Prime Minister of Israel mentioned about this essay that there is a member of our Jewish community in Israel, Sipora Meir, wrote 50 years ago an essay that the two countries should be united, and this has come true. And Sipora was recognized by both the prime ministers. So, Sipora, over to you.
So,
Hello.
Zipporah, sorry, because the sound was poor. What I understood from that, you wrote an essay,
Yes.
and which got the attention of not the of Israel and India. Could you perhaps explain that a little for us?
Yes. While I was a college student in Kerala, I wrote an essay. I was just, actually frustrated the lack of relationship between India and Israel. Despite we were not inimical at all, India and Israel didn't have any relationship that time in the 60s and 70s. 70s we came to Israel. So, as a Jewish, and as a India is my motherland and Israel is my fatherland. Then we wanted very much the relationship go well, but due to some political reasons, they didn't have any connection at all. So I just wrote with my eagerness to be the, for the best connection between India and Israel. I just wrote an essay. That was an essay published in London, actually, by Jewish Chronicle. There was a test for the students, for the student Indian overall Jewish students were all over in Israel in the world. This my essay, actually I was lucky to get the first prize for that, and the theme was, why can't we be friends? I just thought as a student, why India and Israel cannot be friends despite all the good terms. And then I just you said, why can't Israel can help in India many ways, and in agricultural Israel is in the first place in the desert blooming, and desalination of the water, all the water programs Israel has. Israel can help India in many ways, and India is one of the biggest democratic country in the world. Israel, the only democratic country in the Middle East, can have good relationship. I was wondering why it didn't happen. That and I just suggested why it's at Hominy. And actually, when the Prime Minister Modi ji came, and the event happened before the reception event for the Prime Minister, Netanyahu managed somehow he got my essay through one of our journalist friends, and he liked the essay so much. He said, "This girl wrote this essay 50 years back. What is she thought of all these things at a young age? I want to use this." And his press person called me and asked, Is it genuine? And he said, can the prime minister use this in? Okay, of course. I'm really honored for that. And on the reception event for the Modi ji, he called me, Sipora, today is the day. Your dream came true. Now we and India are good friends, and we are not inimical anymore. See, yeah, it was a really honorable moment for me, and I'm really thank God, India and Israel became very good friends, and also the buttressing the bond between India and Israel in many fields now. Through even now that the COVID field, 19 field also, we are doing, myself and Ralphie's club, Rotary, we are Rotarians, we are doing projects together. And India.
So Zipporah, that was a fantastic story. I want to now move away from that site and go into how you help it from Israel and help the Jewish community in India. Perhaps you can explain that.
Okay. See, what I'm trying to do, first of all, I want to show this book. This book is on Indian Jews, the Kerala Jews. I myself and some other friends, Indian Cochin origin Jews wrote for the sake of younger generation. We are writing all our experiences as we were born in India and how we got managed to live in Israel and get through all the difficult time, and for the sake of the new generation, go and chase your roots, how he became. And we, through the Indian Embassy, I'm also a volunteer to the Indian Embassy in Israel. So whenever we go all the places, all the hereditary places of Indian Cochin Jews here in Israel, in India. We go the Cochin. We have the 8 synagogues and the cemeteries and all the countries. We go and we look at the things, what is going on, and we also report to the embassy and report to the people here, and like that. There's a Missouri project. We want these projects to be preserved. We want all these places be preserved. The synagogues are preserved. So we are doing all these things. The volunteers of the embassy, and as myself a community member, we are doing all these things for the preservation of our parents hereditary places.
So thank you, Zipporah, because of course the heritage of the Jewish community in India, if there is no sizable Jewish community, those could go into disrepair. So of course that's a very important thing. But I suspect that travel to India by Jewish tourists, or indeed people interested in that culture, is very, very important for the economy of the Jewish community over there. Is that correct?
Yes, of course. First of all, get to know each other. And also doing business with the Indian people with the things, whatever, and in Israel and India in many ways. But they are interested many goods of India as well as in Israel. We have multi the relationship between India and in Israel many fields.
So if people were going, please God, we can do that very soon. But when we can travel again, where are the hidden parts of the Jewish community that are of particular interest to tourists?
Okay, in Kerala we have 5 places. That means Ernakulam, Cochin, Mala, and Parur. These are the places located. All the Jews were living all these places area, and the Jews themselves were all the time centering the synagogue, living near the sea. And the synagogues and the cemeteries and all these places we have informed all these people. We have written in this book everything, wherever you can go and see all these places to the younger generation. And also in the website of the Indian Embassy, we have written also all these places, where can go and who can see these places. And it's in and the Missouri project. Just now there is a tour for all the Jewish places, 1-day tour for all these Jewish places. Missouri projects with the help of the government.
Thank you, Zipporah. Can I bring Ralphie in? Ideas for Jewish tourists.
Yes, yes.
So, as Deborah said, that Cochin is one of the center, and to of course that one of the destination that people like to go is the Jew town, and
Yes,
also the synagogues and the markets where the Jewish community members are still active, and these other synagogues which are very much there: Kadum, Bagam, Parur, Mala, and also the synagogue in few other places. Now, other areas, other cities, the Jewish travelers basically start in Mumbai because that's where you get the prime active Jewish life, and they see at least 4 to 5 synagogues out of the 10 synagogues, and they generally spend a Shabbat. In Bombay, a Jewish visitor can experience and is always welcomed by the community during Shabbat, with a dinner on Friday after Shabbat and a lunch on Saturday after the Torah reading and the prayer is over with the community. Now, that experience is very unusual. And I know some of those guests, they just said, this is the highlight of our visit to India.
exactly.
So, that is one of the aspect. And then in Mumbai, we have 62 Jewish landmarks. What it means is that either these are Jewish institutions or Jewish contribution, such as the contribution of Sir David Sassoon, or there is a Hafkin Institute. You know, in India, there was a plague, and during the time, Dr. and the world plague was also in India, and that time, which is almost 100 years ago, Dr. Hafkin, a Jewish doctor, invented the medicine, the vaccine for plague. And in order to convince the people that this vaccine is not harmful, it is very useful, Flora Sassoon personally took the vaccine publicly on her shoulder to express that this vaccine will cure the plague. So that was the initiative taken by the Jewish community, which is significant. And then, of course, the Sassoon family established the clock towers, which was a quality from the British punctuality that he wanted to encourage Indian people to follow. And we still follow with a delay of almost 5.5 hours. India and England have got 5.5 hours difference. So, so we continue the legacy. So that is how the Jewish community is in Bombay and in Kolkata, Ahmedabad, Delhi. They are the centers where you can visit the Jewish community. Some of them I know from England visited with me and my wife Yael, who is a Government of India licensed guide, and I teach at the Government of India Ministry of Tourism. So we took them to Manipur and Mizoram, which is in the northeast, and we took them to Erode, which is in the south, and to Andhra, where the other communities were emerging as Jews. So there is a pretty good landscape of India which has the Jewish elements, and then we add a few Indian elements such as the Taj Mahal and the Rajasthan and all those places.
Ralphie, you mentioned about timekeeping. In the UK, the Jewish community is not known for good timekeeping. We have something called Jewish Mean Time, which is about 10 minutes after anything's meant to start. But coming back to food, that offer of Friday night dinners and Saturday lunches is lovely, or Shabbat lunches. But are there special foods that the Indian community has?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure Sipora is eager to add to whatever I will say because she is a great cook, and I have enjoyed my Shabbat meals with Sipora with Kochini recipes. But in my family, we eat Indian Bene Israel recipes, which is basically chicken curry and rice, or fish curry and rice, or fish fried with different kind of snacks. But in Baghdadi community, we have kubbe, we have hashwa, we have also many other dishes which are Baghdadi Oriental dishes, and these are served in our synagogue because the synagogue is a Baghdadi synagogue, and it's a walking distance from the Taj Mahal Hotel or the Oberoi Hotel. So the five-star hotels in the downtown area are just walking distance from the synagogue. Sipora, please add something to
Yes.
the recipes of Indian origin.
I would like to add now I am in the process of writing a Jewish Kochini cuisine book on each and every festival we have in Kerala, Cochin. We have separate dishes. So I'm using my mother's book, which is written in half Malayalam, half Hebrew. So I'm using it and adding it each and every. For instance, just we had now the Tisha B'Av, what we were using Tisha B'Av. We were sitting on the floor and eating, and Rosh Hashanah and also Kippur, Yom Kippur. Before what we are in the Cochin style, what are the dishes for the opening the feast and closing everything. We have separate dishes and thoroughly kosher food, thoroughly kosher. And it was needy for in Cochin Jews to keep kosher, and we were not, since the Shohet came to Israel, we were not eating at all, no mutton at all. Then that was we were strictly Cochin Jews were strictly kosher, like in Bombay. Very all the Jews were really strictly kosher food keeping, and in each and every festival, even now we are generation, next generation also. We want to continue our Cochin Jewish food. Cuba, we didn't know is in Israel. It's also in Kerala we used to eat Cuba. Yeah, that is also this actually many types of Israeli food, Jewish food were in Kerala at that time, and we are still keeping it on.
Right. It's not a good idea to talk about food because Jews can talk about food for about 25 hours or whatever. But just to explain, Tisha B'Av is a fast day. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year. And
Yes.
Yom Kippur is a fast day as well. So I just to put the context in. Ralphie, Zipporah, I'm going to have to start to wrap up because although we've got that extra half an hour, actually it's our hour up really. So I want to thank you, Ralphie and Zipporah, for your marvelous contributions today. I think that a lot of our viewers are going to be starting to reading some of your books. Whether it's about the history of India or whether it's about the cooking. That's wonderful. So from Ralphie from India, Zipporah from Israel, from me, I'm going now back to London and the rather miserable overcast weather we're getting here. Oh, Zipporah, what time is it in Israel?
It is now
2:00.
1:55 in Israel. Almost 2:00. Almost 2:00.
And what's the weather like?
Yeah, wonderful. Very nice weather. Very nice weather.
Very, very good. Okay. All right. That's lovely. So if I may, I'd just like to tell our viewers, particularly those of in Hampstead, what's coming up. So what I'm hoping to do is to continue our visits to countries in September and possibly even in October. Not so much as a holiday destination, but actually to commemorate and to memorialize Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. These are the two major festivals that are coming up, and maybe into Sukkot, which is another festival that comes into October. And it would be good, I think, to find out, particularly from the African countries who we haven't visited recently, what their traditions are and what their music is and what their foods are. So that could be of considerable interest. So I'm hoping that we can sort that out in a couple of weeks' time. But this is the final of our 3 visits for the Global Staycation. And so I want to thank particularly Rabbi Yoni Golka from St. John's Wood Synagogue up the road from here for giving us the contacts and all the rest of it. So thank you very much to him. Leo Mindell and the team for all their technical support. I was really fearful that things were not going to go well today because before we started, we didn't get the right connections and things were looking very, very dodgy. But I'm thankfully that we did. We probably said a Hebrew prayer that maybe worked. So thank you for that. And also to the US.tv. They are, if you look to them online, you should see the recordings of this series and a previous series from Hampstead. And I want to tell you that coming up is something rather special. Hampstead has a musical tradition. And last year we hosted what is known as a Selichot service just before Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. It's a choral midnight service in our magnificent cathedral-like synagogue. And last year, for no apparent reason that I can work out, it was actually filmed. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the world premiere of that service online at theus.tv, so because we can't do it this year. In fact, because of social distancing, it's going to be very hard to do something like that. So if you're interested in the musical heritage of the Hampstead Synagogue, then please go to theus.tv and you should find that there. And it also will feature an address by the Emeritus Chief Rabbi, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. So that's something very special. Also, we're going to, for our members, hopefully we're going to have some of the musical highlights of our service for those people who can't come to the synagogue. And that will feature our Chazan, Rabbi Shlomo Gerzi. And later in the year, our Rabbi, Rabbi Dr. Michael Harris, will be celebrating 25 years with us in the Hampstead community. And so we're going to bring 25 top educators from all around the world for an online event. So that should be really very special. And that's on top of our supper quizzes, our lunch and learns, tea parties, the book club, and other activities that we have online. So for whatever you want to join us, please do so. The more the merrier. That would be marvelous. Now, I just want to finish by doing something quite for the benefit of those people who watched the last session. That was when we were in Israel. There were two organizations that we're going to give you the contact details for if you are interested. So I'm hoping that these will be flashed up at the bottom of your screen. One is Sahi. That was the very interesting charity, wasn't it, that helped people in lockdown. This was young people who were giving some support to very vulnerable people in Israel. So that's the organization there, sahi-israel.org/EN. That will be the English website. And if you are in the position of being able to travel to Israel anytime soon, the second organization is pomegranatetravel.com. Again, they seem to like hyphens in Israel. So it's pomegranate-travel.com. Okay, so those are the two there. So I think unless there's anything that Ralphie or Zipporah wants to say, I think we need to say goodbye.
So I just want to say thank you very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure to welcome your Rabbi Michael Harris's mother, Anne Harris, to India on a visit, on a tour. So generally, this is how it is. So we are connected around the world because someone from some congregation has always visited us in India. Thank you very much.
It's a very small world. It really is. So thank you, Zipporah. Thank you, Ralphie.
I just want to add one small thing. My father-in-law, my husband's father, he was the only scribe in the whole area in Cochin and India. And we are still keeping the way he used to write the Sefer Torah with the special ink, how the family used to make and also the cloth, everything they were doing in the house, and we have everything. And somebody came just to did a documentary filming. I just wanted to show in the next time how it was for years. He was in Israel also. He was passed this test of the rabbinate, Jerusalem rabbinate, to write the Sefer Torah. And one of his Sefer Torah, it was going all around the world, United States, United Kingdom, and all over India. And now it's one in Israel also. It came from Pakistan. It came to Italy, and it then came to in one of the Sefer Torah my father-in-law wrote. And we are still keeping all his pens and the very with the bird, with the feather of the bird that was writing, and very special ink from how they were making. And we are still. I just wanted to show that time. I would be pleased to show it. And thank you very, very much. And really, it's an honor to be with you. And
Pleasure, likewise. And that's really, the scribe is very, very important. The Torah has to be recreated from generation to
yes,
generation. And the fact
exactly.
that the Indian community has lasted 2,500 years and continues to this day, perhaps with Israel now, is a testament to what you're doing. So thank you very much to Ralphie. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Zipporah.
very, very
And,
much.
and
All the
thank you.
best.
And thank you
Shalom.
everybody for
Shalom
watching.
from Israel.
Shalom from
Shalom.
Israel. Thank you.
Shalom.